Today I'm gonna walk you through on how I created this portrait here. So I think this is kind of like a subtle impasto portrait that I did, and it's quite simple to create and it's very easy. So let me just turn all these off and we can create this together. First we will add in the canvas texture, and I usually use this red one for the canvas texture. Just enlarge it a little bit. So if you find that the canvas texture weave is too big, you can always just duplicate it a couple of times. So just make like 2 copies, duplicate it again so that the weave is like smaller and not so obvious. Alright, right now I'm gonna start sketching. Set it to some bright color that you can see. I usually use the natural sketch and smudge brush, and right now I just want to like lay out the enveloping shape first, and then the hair. So for me, I don't really shade at this stage. Like, I just try and keep it as clean as possible and just lines. And let's drop the chin in. Don't have to be very precise here. I usually like redo my sketch like maybe 3 times, something like that, and then I'll just create another layer and fine-tune this again. Turn this opacity down and fine-tune again. So after fine-tuning, this is what I have, and it's kind of difficult to see right now because it's in blue. So I'm just going to switch this to a darker color so that we can all see. Alright, and then after that we will work with the values. So for the values, where you will usually put this back to blue, because once you paint the dark colors over it, you won't be able to see the sketch anymore. And then make a new layer, and this is how I usually build my dark colors. So the first layer has to be almost black. You can use any color first. You don't really have to like worry. In fact, you can even use blue. It doesn't really matter. So I use dry square brush and I just test it, and this is wrong, by the way. It's supposed to be like strokes. So I'm just gonna go into the shape and flip it back up. But it has to do with the orientation of the canvas. So it's supposed to look like this. The goal right now is just to block in all the blacks, anything that is like pure black. So this is what I would usually do. I just mainly fill in the shape first and not worry about anything else. We just want to get the shape correct first. So we're not working with shadows yet. We are only targeting like pure blacks. So once you have like the rough shape like this, go ahead to your eraser and get the rig brush and clean up the edges. Make your shape. So this is where you can get like really creative. Like, you don't have to have like perfect shapes, right? It's because like when people paint with oil paint, there can be like smudges and scratches at the edges. Make sure to only really target like the blacks. Later on, we will just split this layer into another shadow layer so that it's convenient for us. Sometimes you have to paint again to carve out whatever that you have missed out like this. Today is a really easy tutorial because I find that you don't need a lot of impasto going around to make your artwork stand out. It's just a matter of like subtlety. I want to work on these areas separately, so I don't want to worry about the blacks here first. I'm just trying to get the hair at the moment. And of course, if you find that you missed something, you can always just go over it again, get a clean line for that side, and then for the ear as well, and then clean up this edge a little bit, trying to get like the edges here, tiny little hairs. Okay, once you get like a shape like this, what I like to do, I like to make a new layer, and then I work with all the other blacks that I couldn't have worked before, like for the face. So in this new layer, I start to work with like the eyes, places where I feel like really have blacks. Of course, you don't really have to use this method of carving, but this is just my preferred way of working. And then right here, so I'm just cleaning up this side and giving it the shadow it requires. And then here, so these are like the blacks. And then of course the lips, some other shadows that I want to convert to black, like here. And maybe some of the ear, because I feel like the ear is like quite dark, right? So we can work with those as well. Right. Maybe want to tighten up certain areas, and I think I would like some lower lashes, so it's kind of hard to carve with precision, but whatever works. So now that we have our blacks, we can just turn off the sketch and take a look. Okay, so this is like our blacks, so let's just name it our blacks. Okay, so now that we have like the blacks done already, we can create a new layer underneath, and we can call it highlights, and we just work with the whites. If it makes you more comfortable like working with the mid-tones now, you can do so as well, but I find that it's easier for me if I do the highlights so that I can see clearly what's happening. As usual, the color don't really matter. Oh god, this is too sharp. You just have to like get the shapes down. So we are just doing the same thing. I'm just painting and carving, and sometimes I'm using the spray brush if I want something soft. So the reason why the canvas is in red is so that we can preview the values, so we don't really have to work with this value anymore. We are just working with every other value except the canvas one. Okay, I'm just sharpening some of the edges, and then trying to get some precise shapes going in using other brushes. So right now you're worrying about like the values and the shapes, so you don't have to worry about anything else. Trying to get like a pleasing shape for this part of the highlight. Let's try and erase and see if we can get something pleasing. You can use, of course, the sketch brush for areas that has more tiny details. But I generally like don't really use the sketch brush other than to sketch, because when we are painting something like this, it's not very good to use the sketch brush. It looks too doodly and stiff. It's not loose enough. So I'm kind of almost like sculpting at this point. Sculpting all the values in. Oops, this part I want something soft. Make sure it's not too big so that it don't overlap whatever I already have. Okay, I think this is what I want for the highlights. So we can just turn it off and check. So this is what we have at the moment, and it looks like this. So right now, the easy thing to do is just to fill in the values in between, like a darker shadow, but not as black as this, and mid-tones. So now what we want to do is to just fill in the values in between all the other shadows and mid-tones. So you can choose to go from dark to light or light to dark. It's up to you. Well, for me, I have an affinity for shadows, so I'm just going to create a new layer right at the bottom and call it shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint a value that is brighter than the blacks but darker than the canvas. So in order to do that, let me just pick the color of the canvas and make sure it's like slightly dark. Yeah, so something like that would be good. So what we want to do is just to fill in all the other areas that we feel have this value. this. Oh, let me turn on my sketch. Yeah. So the more details you have, you find that you can really reduce the opacity of your sketch. Let me just solidify this shape for a bit. Okay, and fill up this shape as well. Make her face like more rounded. So because we already have the base canvas color here already, it makes it easier for our eyes to see the values. Just defining like some of the shapes here. And maybe her lips. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that for all these value layers you work with very low opacity and translucent kind of shapes, because it can make it hard for you later on when you want to color. So try not to do things like this and things like that. It's gonna make it very difficult for you because you're basically using the value at a lower intensity just to simulate lighter values. So we don't want that. We want everything to be quite solid, or else you're gonna run into a lot of problems when you're coloring later on. Okay, I'm just gonna fill in the rest of the hair, especially those parts that I erased, so that I can have this value in here as well to soften the edge of the hair. Okay, so you can see that it's like coming together. The face is really feeling more 3D now. So that's it, done for this layer. So quick. Okay, right now I want to work from the highlights, so we can still create the layer below everything, but I think this is like mid-tone. So it's got to be darker than the highlight, but brighter than everything else. So I'm just going to pick the highlight and try and get a color in. I think this is good. As long as it's a color where we can see the values. Okay, so now I'm just going to fill in everything that I miss. Oh, I would need my sketch. Can use the spray for softer edges and fill in this area. Alternatively, I can just do a heart shape like this and then just use the spray brush to erase. Okay, gotta be careful here. I'm trying to avoid like certain shapes. So the question is, how do you know how many values to incorporate? Well, it all depends on how much you want to simplify. If you want it to be very realistic, then you have to have a lot of layers. You can always just minimize it to like 4 or 5, which is quite common. 4 to 5 values are like super common. You can see that the shapes are like coming out already. If you're curious about all the layers, you can just download this file from my website at hazelong.com. I think I would set up like a subscription thing where you can just download the files, but at the moment I'm still quite worried about like how people are going to download so many big files at once. So I might just remove all the time lapse in the projects in order to keep the file size small. That's it for this layer, and you can just judge, like looking at this, do you think it needs like another value, or is this like enough for you to move on to color? I mean, considering that the canvas is also another value, right? And then of course we are just ignoring the clothes because the clothes is just a single solid block for me this time. For me, looking at this, I think I need another mid-tone to fill in all the other brighter areas. I would keep the canvas as part of the shadows that comes right after this value. So just one more layer for me. So I've decided to have the mid-tone just now that we have painted as 1, and this would be as 2. So for mid-tone 2, it would have to be something darker a little bit compared to what we have right now. So let's see, this is still too close. Maybe something like this. I'm gonna make it more vibrant so that I can see what the heck I'm painting. Okay, it's very close, but I think it's gonna be worth it. Like, I would be able to really see the modeling of the face become really tight. So I'm just using my airbrush here to carefully fill in the values and retaining parts of it as shadows. So just tightening the whole face value design wise. And then I would want this white as well. Okay, switch to my soft brush to kind of sculpt this area upwards and get this part sculpted as well. And I want to really carve out this part. Okay, time for the small stuff. I am just going to duplicate this so that it's more solid, because right now I can still see like the canvas behind it. So I just want this value to be a lot more solid. Okay, there we go. It's so quick. And now I think we have like the modeling down already and we can work on the colors. So in order to work with the colors, there's a few ways to do it. You can just immediately like start applying colors to every single layer. But then a big chunk of our painting right now is like in the canvas color. So we kind of have to decide on the overall color first. So I want this to be pinkish and the shirt to maintain like some sort of blue-ish. So maybe like this color. Alright, let's do it. Okay, so once you've decided on the color, I'm just going to quickly lock it in. Oh, I think I'm just gonna do it above everything else. Seeing that I did not really do a very clean cut of the shape for the shadow and the backs. Okay, maybe I will end here. Okay, so I'm just doing some color coordination first before moving into the more serious parts of like really picking out the colors for the skin tones. So just some shapes. Maybe this area I would want a light color as well, and then carve it out again. But I could put this in the layer below everything else without having to carve, but it's okay. Okay, something like that. Maybe this one. Okay, so if everything is gonna be like this, there's gonna be some sort of the same value repeating over here. Oh, I want to carve out like that. Okay, I'm just laying down the shapes and see where that takes me. Okay, let's start carving. Maybe I want some more shapes here. Majority of the work this time is going to be in this area because it was really ignored and simplified earlier on. I'm just deciding like on the fly like what is blue and what's not, which part is hair. And then for areas that I'm not sure, I'm just like skipping it. Because when I was sketching this, I didn't really like have a clear idea of what I want. Like this one. Okay, let's clean up this edge. Do I want it sharpish? Okay, so it's pretty flat here, so I think I'm gonna like introduce some sort of a sketch just by carving, just maintaining the value of the canvas as a shadow, trying to keep it really slim so that it's not so like obvious. Okay, I will keep this as it is for now. And now I think I'm going to fill in the rest of the colors first. Okay, let's just name this like color top. And this is like everything else. Trying to decide like what color to use. Maybe pinkish, salmony, something like that. Okay, just lock it in first. Not gonna think too much. this abstract layer. Maybe I keep this in this. Seems like it's a bit light over here and dark over here. I think let's make this brighter first. Brighter and colder to match this blue. Okay, there we go. I think more. Okay. And this part, I think I need something darker to complement this. So get back this color. Maybe I'm just gonna move it down. Okay, there we go. Question is, how far does this block goes? Okay. Oh, I think it's too bright. I'm gonna get back this color and see how it looks like. And then this one, I want it darker even. Darker. I'm gonna try and clean up the shapes a little bit. What should be straight should be straight. Oh, nice. This seems a bit dark now. So I'm gonna come here. I think I just want this part. And probably shift the colors over this side. So just pick this color, try and shift it and see. Okay, I think overall this is like the color. So to get started with everything else, first we're gonna start from the top to the bottom, ignoring this color top first. I'm just gonna leave it as it is and work on the blacks first. So for the blacks, we're just gonna create a new layer, clipping mask it, and then leave it as it is. So this will be like coloring the colors for this layer. Right now the blacks are all in like dark blue, so we're gonna have to change that. For portraits, the shadows is very rarely in blues. It's usually here in reds and then orange and then yellows, and that's as far as it goes. And even if there's any other changes, it's mostly going to grays. Yeah, you're gonna have to find a generic brown first. Yeah, this is much better. So just give it a generic brown first before we lay in everything else. For the hair, here it's gonna be a little bit gray and a little bit lighter. So just gonna move it up and see. It's lighter, but it's still brown. So I'm gonna move it to the left to make it colder, please. Yes, this is what I want. So it's kind of very subtle, like it's still blacks, like in the group of blacks when you look from far, but when you look closely, you can see like there are differences. Then just going to get the shape out. And here as well. It's like really subtle so that it still stay like in the group. And for here, I can't see anything because the shadow color is like driving my eye nuts. So I'm gonna have to fix that first before I can continue. Yeah, let's just fix that first. For the shadow, I'm just gonna create the same thing and then just get that done. Like this part is just driving me insane. For this part, I need this like grayed out, like super grayed out. So I have this same color here. I'm just gonna pick side by side, so that when I change, I can see how similar it is. And trying to match the value. Okay, it's gray now. I'm just coloring over it, and I think that's a bit too gray, so... Okay. Oh, yes, okay, my eyes. I was dying. I don't want to paint over the face, so trying to avoid those parts. So like areas like this where it's really easy, first you can just do a quick sweep so that it don't bother you. Okay, so back to the blacks. So if I find that I have a layer here and I don't want to disturb it, I can just create another layer and do the same thing, like clipping mask, so that I can have a separate layer working on the colors. Just some blending for those areas. We can work with the face. So here, is usually the color of the brow, right? So it's kind of like brownish. Takes a few tries to get the color. And it doesn't have to be like the same color throughout. It can be darker in the center. And then here, okay, just gonna keep this. Usually in the nose, the color is like dark red. Yeah, like close to it, as well as the lips. So don't really have to worry about that. Okay, I think the black layer is done. Usually it's really simple. It either goes yellow, orange, or red, and gray. That's it. You can just take a look here and decide where to follow. Just try and exaggerate like the colors you see. So when you're done, just merge these two layers so that it become like one, and you don't have any like complicated layers lying around. Now that it's done, we can go on to the next layer. I don't want to worry about highlights first, because highlights is usually just blue or yellow. So let's worry about the shadows. Okay, so just now we place like a placeholder color here, and we gotta detail this. So it cannot be all the same color. So I'm just gonna give it some variations and see where that gets me. So certain areas where I feel that it's too light, that's too red. Basically, you can just use any color you want. It's quite safe as long as you stay within the same palette. Where else? Sometimes I just toggle it off and on to see what else I need to do. Oh, the face, and here I'm just gonna leave it. So I'm just gonna focus on the face. The face is a bit too red, so I'm just gonna pick the same color first and switch it over to brown. Most likely darker and a little bit more red. Yeah, something like that. And then for the rest, ears are usually very red, so pull it all the way to the right for more vibrancy, and just keep it this way for now before we get to the midtones. Don't have to be very specific here. Okay, what we gotta worry about are the eyes in these areas. So I'm gonna turn down the shape of my brush to get to those areas. I want gray for eyes. For here, usually some pale red. Because it's all mostly lines, so it's kind of hard for us to pinpoint the color, because there's not much for us to look at this time. We can only guess and then later come back to it once we work on other layers. So I usually just do like a quick solid color to see like, oh, I have to paint here. And for here, I think let's figure out the color. Maybe slightly more vibrant and darker. Okay, this is good. Let's just keep this like this for now. So I'm just gonna make a new layer above everything else, and let me just drop a color in and see what I have to work with. Oh, so just this area. Okay, good. So I just want to work on these areas because this is really bothering me. So for this layer, we're actually working with the same value as the canvas. It has to be the exact same value. So for here, it has to be lighter than everything else. Let me see. There we go. I'm just dumping in colors. I'm not really worried about this part for now. I'm just trying to get something I like, because this is abstract, right? And then I'm just coloring it first. Okay, it looks much better now because it's no longer like red. So I can decide if this belongs to the hair or to the background. So if I want it to be on the background, I can just like that. Then it becomes part of the background. And the more blue I put. As for here, I would try this color and see what happens. Okay, now the whole face is red, and I can see that it's too vibrant, so let's just bring it down a little bit and see if the value still works. Maybe it needs to be darker. Okay, so we can agree that this is the value that we want. All we need to do is change the color. So I'm just gonna keep this here so that I can have this as a reference. So for the lips, it's gonna be a lot more colder. This color. For the ear as well, I'm gonna use this same color. I want something like this but more pale for the nose. And I want something really gray. So every time I'm changing color, I'm actually matching the value. Like this is too dark. So I'm going back up to make sure that it's the same value. The moment you put in grays, it's gonna look a lot more realistic. Maybe this has to be gray. I can see all the colors here. This part has to be a lot more brownish. Yes, but different color. Where was that gray? This was the gray? Yep. And then this part can be really gray. Once I have this, I have quite a good base for me to work with M1 and M2. Create a new layer, clipping mask it, and this would be the coloring. I'm just gonna paint everything blue because I can't see it. Because right now we're just working at the face and nothing else. Okay, so this is all I'm working on at the moment, which is this brownish color. It looks almost like it's matching already. I see a part where I could change. Oops, make sure I have two of the same swatch. I don't want to lose the color. And then here has got to be gray. Don't forget, like, it's supposed to be brighter than this layer, the one above everything else. I'm just going to change the color without worrying. Okay, this one I want it to be redder. This part may be more grayish. When you paint and you can tell like it's darker, it usually means that it's darker and you have to change back the value. I'm painting really lightly so that I can like have subtle tones. And subtlety is key here. Almost there guys. We're just gonna keep fine-tuning like the rest of the layers. Okay, so now that my M2 is almost there, just gonna work on M1. Let me just rename layers a little bit. Okay, this has got to go. Let me just pick. Okay, I have two, same. Just change color and the chroma without worrying about everything else. I'm switching my smudge to the soft edge shaper smudge for softer lines. And then here, I want brighter but more vibrant. Okay, let's get the gray for the eyes and the nose. We are probably switching it back to more red, colder a little bit, too vibrant. Okay, yeah. Now that I see this, I can fine-tune the canvas layers coloring. So I want like this to be the blusher, so this cannot stay the same color. It needs to be more subdued a little bit. Let me just solve that. It shouldn't be so vibrant here. Okay. See, we're getting more and more realistic already, and I'm just gonna keep pushing and see what I need to do. I think this needs to be darker so that it's more defined. There, I can see it popping now. Okay, now I can continue working with my M1. And then I want something gray. It's usually getting gray colors. I'm seeing like too much of a shift here compared to here. It looks like two separate shapes. So yeah, so I need to address that a little bit. Okay. Oh, I named the layer above everything else called M3, like the canvas layer that has all the colors with the same value as the canvas. So everything is almost done. I just have to deal with, okay, at this point I want to detail the color top. So I'm just going to put in some dark and light a little bit. I'm not really going to worry so much about the creases. I'm going to let the impasto do the job. Since it's a bit abstract, I can just swap colors anytime. This is like kind of free-flowing a little bit, so I need this to be like reddish. Okay, I want this color. Okay, then I'm undoing and using that pink. Well, let me just explain how that flow works. Okay, we started here, so let's call it starting point, and we ended here. So it goes from here to here. So this is like green. It's purple. So green going to purple. Here we have blue. And moving here we have, it looks like pink, but it's actually orange. But I think we can label this as gray because it actually connects everything. So let me just show you how that works. So here, this is the color. This is this color. I remember telling you that it's supposed to have the gray identity, so gray will be here. Gray is here. So while this looks disconnected, but they're actually all analogous color, like green is next to blue and purple is next to blue, and then the grays connect everything else. So when you put that together, everything like makes sense. Okay, so now everything is mostly done. It's just the details is not there yet, like the highlights and everything. So just paint that in with a new layer. I usually do this like above everything else, but it doesn't really matter if you put it like up here or here. You can choose to color first. I mean, like just give it the color, and then later on change the color of this layer. Going around. This is like my details layer. I just put in everything I miss. So in the end, I have something like this, and I'm just gonna call these details. So this will be my base painting. So this is like a subtle impasto setup. First step to set this out is to get to my streaky, set this to black and white, and set this layer to overlay. It has to be above everything else. So make sure it's white that's selected and not black. You can see in the selector here, make sure it's white. Okay, if this is, let's see, too much. The darks, too dark. The highlights too harsh as well. So let's lower the contrast between these two. So this one I'm bringing it down, this one I'm bringing it up. And then let's test it out. Much better. I think it's too bright, so it's still too bright. I just want like subtle brush strokes, so I'm just gonna do that. Make sure the size is something tight and small, and I just want to wrap the whole contour of the face with this brush first. Make sure like the texture is acceptable and it's not like messy. I can do the hair as well. For here I can get it bigger, especially this part, because it's more streaky. Maybe I'm gonna go change to the brick brush. Oh, so nice. So get back to my streaky, just looking for areas that need these brush strokes. Okay, once you're done, click on this and mask. Then use the eraser, fat spray brush, make it big, and just softly, very softly go over your face to reduce the texture to a level where it's natural and subtle. Okay, like this. So it's there but barely. I think I can add some like dry thick paint. The dry thick paint is a D, so I'm painting with the shadow. Okay, Okay, I'm not trying not to add too many. Okay, I'm gonna go to the dark mask and reduce the intensity a little bit. There we go. So the subtle impasto layer is done. So now we're gonna work with the rest of the impasto. The quick way to do it is to maintain this, okay? Make it brighter a little bit. Some contrast is good. Okay, now just pick a few. Make sure it's at the maximum size and create something like this. A separate impasto stamp every layer. I'm gonna work with stamps first. So pick things that you want to use. Don't pick stamps that you will not use. Make sure it's at the maximum size. So this is like a library. Oh, this is good. I love to use this brush for like hair and things that like twist and turn. I don't think I'll be using the round thick paint for this one. I've been using that way too much. Okay, now what we want to do is just use these and arrange it over the entire artwork. Don't worry about the colors. So the face is going to be very subtle and make sure that it's not obvious. So every time I want to use, I duplicate and then I use the lower one. I'm just going to put it where I want it. Okay, maybe one like this. And then this one somewhere here. It's like a lazy workflow because I just don't want to bother with the color at the moment. So make sure that everything that you're using is like at the bottom. So let me show you. So you just resize and put it first. Make sure like you build like everything you want. Drag what I'm using down. I'm just gonna create like a empty layer here so that I know like everything down here I've used. You can see that I'm just putting in all the stamps at the moment. So I'm just consolidating the actions that I'm doing so that it's like quicker. Because I think that if we worry about the shape, the colors, everything all at one go, we just get stuck doing the same action every time. Okay, make sure it's here. So I can't keep doing this forever because I will run out of layers eventually. So I have to stop at one point. Okay, so let's say this is my starting impasto. So now I worry about the shapes. When you work, so after you have like the rough placement of everything, the first thing you want to do is to drop in the shadow. Make sure you target the darkest point. Drag it all the way to the right, the threshold. Look at it, make sure it's 100%. Then for the highlight, make sure you drop it on the whitest point. Don't drop it in the midtones. Okay. And make sure to go back down. Like you see, I am undoing and doing it again. Okay, make sure you're only targeting the highlights. Okay, and not the shadow, because this is 27%. If I drag it all the way to 100, you see it changes the shadow and it becomes more contrasty. So make sure it's at 27% or whatever percent is working on at that moment. Once you have dropped your colors, then you can begin to adjust the shape, do your smudging and your sculpting. Now next layer, this one is this one here. So this one I'm just going to smudge the shape first. I find that if I consolidate my actions like this, I work faster and not as stressful. I'm gonna see if I can just drop this on the highlight and call this a day. Okay, yeah, it works. Okay, for every layer that I'm done, I'm merging it. And easy. I'm gonna drop in the color for this first. Okay, if you drop it into the highlight and you think the contrast is too high, this is what you can do. You drop it again into the middle part, like the mid-tone area, and see what happens. If the contrast is still too high, you have got to undo, come back to the black and white version, decide on the shadow first. So like this, I'm deciding that the shadow is going to be this color. drop in the shadow first. Then you try and drop in the highlights. And drop in the highlights and do the partial thing again. You just drop it into the highlights and make sure it's only affecting the highlights. Now this is a bit difficult because a lot of colors. Yeah, like that. So now the contrast is lower, but because we drop it into the highlight, the overall color is still not the same as the background. So drop it again in the center and it should be good. Yeah, now you can smudge it. Smudge the shape that you want. Easy, right? Okay, now just smudged it. And then this one, just gonna pick the color and pray that when I drop it in, it's okay. Of course, it's not okay. So if it's not okay, we gotta do this a couple of times. Okay, doing like a gradient impasto. I'm really having issues with this shadow here, so gotta do a 27 threshold again. Yep, something like that. Okay, and then merge it, and then smudge it, and then this one I really gotta reduce the contrast. For the face, if you want to be subtle, make sure the shadow is not so harsh, especially these areas. Okay, this is done. This is highlights. Highlights can afford to have more contrast. Yeah, definitely, for sure, highlights can have more contrast. Let's make sure it's sitting nicely. Merge it. Next one is this one. This is going to be difficult. So I already can foresee a lot of problems with the shadow. So I'm taking the initiative to drop in the shadow first at 100. Then turning it off and getting this color. Drop it in right here. Yep, lower the threshold so that we are keeping the color of the shadow just now. Now, smudging it. Erasing some parts. Just wants like a slight hint of impasto, not much. Okay. Same goes for this. Decide the color of the shadow first and drop it in. Oops. Make sure the initial shadow is 100 and drop it in again. Okay, play with the threshold a little bit. Okay, make sure it's not covering parts that could interfere with the gradient or the modeling. Okay, and remove some of the shadow a little bit so that it's not so obvious. Alright, so you continue building like this. For your impasto layer, make sure you just merge down as you go from your stamp library. Then the next thing to do is just to quickly put in your painted impasto. So impasto that you can paint on, usually with liners. So for this, you have to kind of just pick colors as you go. Okay. And then you can start to detail these parts as well. You can use the liner Streaky Smooth or Round Thick Paint D to do your detailing. You can still use the smudge tool. The Round Thick Paint D is kind of good for highlights. Like this, yeah, it's much smaller. You can even make this 3D. So just pick the two colors since they're already side by side. Yeah, maybe a tad brighter. Okay, continue to use the liners to put in the shapes. So this is where your creativity comes out. Things don't really have to make sense. I mean, this is abstract art. So, okay, at this point, you can just merge the shapes. Like for this, merge it so that it's part of everything else. Then just continue to lay in your lines. Okay, looking mostly done, and this is how it looks like at this moment. You can continue cleaning up or decide to change things up. I mean, it's only done once you decide it's done, but this is the workflow, yeah, in creating this piece. So I will see you in the next video. I think it's probably going to be another portrait. So see you in the next video. Bye.